Happy holidays and a very Merry Christmas to you all. It is December 25th, 2025. You'd think things would slow down for the holidays, but the world of AI, it just doesn't stop. And as we look ahead to 2026, it feels like we're standing at this massive crossroads. The tech is just screaming forward, right? But so are all the big fights about it. The stakes, well, they've never been higher. So today, we're going to try to cut through all that noise and figure out what's really going on. And, to really set the stage, let's just start with this. It's a quote from Rubrik's CEO, Bipul Sinha, and it's pretty chilling. Agents can do 10x more damage in 1/10 of the time if hijacked. Think about that for a second. We're not just talking about chatbots anymore. We're talking about systems that can do things, that can take real action. This quote, it just perfectly nails the tightrope we're walking. Absolutely incredible power, but also this massive, massive responsibility to not mess it all up. All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this today. We've broken it down into 5 big themes. We'll start with a battle over the new rules for AI. Then we'll get into these new autonomous agents. After that, we'll look at the one thing that could actually slow all this down. Then we'll separate the hype from the hard reality for businesses. And finally, we'll talk about what it all means for you and me. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's jump into our first section, AI's new rules of engagement. And really, the big question is, who gets to write the rulebook? Because right now, it is a full-blown tug-of-war between the federal government and individual states. The White House wants one set of rules for the whole country, but then you've got states like California and New York saying, nope, not fast enough, and they're passing their own tough laws. And believe me, whoever wins this fight is going to shape what AI looks like in the US for a long, long time.
And here's the clash in a nutshell. You've got the feds, right? The president's executive order is basically saying, hey, let's have one national policy and let's keep it minimally burdensome. They're even telling the Department of Justice to push back on state laws that go too far. But the states aren't waiting around. California, New York, they're already on the move, passing laws like the RAISE Act to protect their own citizens and demand more transparency. So what you end up with is this messy patchwork of rules that companies are trying to figure out. It's really the classic states' rights versus federal power showdown, just with AI at the center of it.
So what does this actually mean for the companies building these things? Well, for the big players, the ones making those super powerful frontier models, it's no longer just about writing code. Now they have a very real compliance checklist. They have to lay out their safety protocols in writing. If something goes wrong, a critical incident, they've got 72 hours to report it. They need to get audited by a third party every single year. And they have to put protections in place for whistleblowers. The takeaway here is huge. The whole move fast and break things mantra, it's pretty much over. Welcome to the age of accountability.
All right, so the rulebook is being written. It's messy, but it's happening. But what about the technology itself? This is where things get, really interesting. We're moving beyond AI that just gives you information. Now, we're giving AI a to-do list and the keys to the office. This is the rise of autonomous agents. So, you're probably hearing this term agentic AI thrown around a lot. What does it actually mean? Well, think of it like this. It's an autonomous system. You give it a goal, it makes a plan, it figures out what tools it needs, like apps or websites, and then it actually goes and does the thing to achieve that goal. It's the difference between asking, what are the best flights to Tokyo, and saying, book me the best flight to Tokyo, find me a hotel, and add the 3 best ramen spots near it to my calendar. It just handles it. And the potential here is just wow. Take what Anthropic is doing. They're trying to create an open standard for something they call agent skills. The idea is basically to create an app store for AI agents. An agent could learn a new skill, say how to navigate your company's awful expense reporting software, and then it could just share that skill with every other agent, instantly. The productivity gains could be absolutely massive. But, and there's always a but, right? There's a real peril here. Researchers are talking about a coordination tax. It's this weird effect where adding more agents to a problem can actually lead to more errors, not fewer. They get out of sync, they step on each other's toes, and a tiny mistake can snowball into a total mess. And then there's a security side. Every single one of these agents is a potential new way for bad actors to get into your systems. It's a huge new attack surface that we're still figuring out how to defend. And if you want a real-world, high-stakes example, look no further than the Pentagon. They are actually integrating xAI's Grok right into their secure GenAI.mil platform. We're talking about agents cleared for impact level 5, which means they'll be handling controlled, unclassified information. Yes, military data. On one hand, you get these insane real-time insights from what's happening on X.
But on the other, it creates this massive dependency on what people are calling the Musk stack. That's a huge strategic risk to take.
Okay, so these agents are powerful, they're complex, they're being deployed everywhere. But what's powering the brains behind them? The new bottleneck in AI isn't about code. It's not about algorithms. It's about something much more basic: electricity.
Let me just throw a number at you. $4.75 billion. That's how much Google's parent company Alphabet just shelled out. And you'd think, oh, they must have bought some amazing new AI startup, right? Nope. They bought a company called Intersect, an energy and data infrastructure firm. And that one purchase tells you everything you need to know about the new strategy in this AI arms race. The motto is basically, own the electrons, own the future. See, the amount of electricity needed to train and run these things is just staggering. The public grid can't always handle it, and that's becoming a huge bottleneck. So, what do? You buy the power plant. You own your energy source. That way, you de-risk the whole operation and you control your costs. It's a whole new kind of competitive advantage. But this whole build-it-anywhere approach is hitting some serious pushback. Down in Mississippi, for example, there's a petition from local residents to shut down a new XAI power plant. They're worried about the environmental impact, the health risks from the gas turbines, the whole 9 yards. And this really highlights a growing tension, doesn't it? You've got this national race for AI supremacy clashing directly with the very real on-the-ground concerns of local communities. Okay, so the models are powerful, the power plants are being built, everything's ready to go. But what actually happens when all this amazing tech gets inside a real company? Well, that's where the hype train can come to a screeching halt. Let's talk about the reality of enterprise AI and why so many of these projects just aren't working out. I want you to really hear this number, 95%. That's not a typo. A study from the MIT Media Lab found that 95% of corporate investments in Gen AI have delivered zero results. Nothing. That is a staggering disconnect between the promise we see in the demos and the reality of deploying it. It feels like we're on the verge of a huge reality check for how businesses are thinking about AI. So what gives? Why is it failing so often? Well, it's not just one thing, it's a whole mess of problems. A lot of the time it starts with the data. It's just not good enough. But even if you get past that, you've got governance issues, major security headaches, and the fact that these models can be super unpredictable. Salesforce actually had to scale back its use of LLMs because they just couldn't trust them enough. Then you've got all the hidden costs, like finding talent and all the red tape, and suddenly any speed you thought you were gaining is just gone. It's a minefield of practical problems. All right, so it's a mess for big companies, and that's a huge deal. But let's bring it back down to us. How is all this impacting individuals? That brings us to our last section, and it's all about the big stuff. Copyright, what creativity even means anymore, and maybe most importantly, control. Let's start with the copyright fight, which is just all over the place right now. In the US, you've got authors ditching class action lawsuits and suing AI companies one-on-one, hoping they can get more accountability and, frankly, bigger damages. But then you look across the pond to the UK, and it's a totally different story. A high court there just ruled that the weights inside an AI model, the core of how it works, aren't actually infringing copies. That's a huge blow to a key argument creators have been using. It just goes to show nobody really agrees on the rules here. And then there's the question of creativity. There was this really wild experiment. Researchers set up a feedback loop. Step 1, an AI makes an image. Step 2, a different AI writes a caption for that image. Step 3, that caption becomes the prompt for a new image. And they just let it run, over and over. And you know what happened? It didn't matter what they started with. Eventually, all the images started looking the same. They all collapsed into these same dozen cliches, lighthouses, cathedrals, stuff like that. It's kind of scary, right? It's like visual elevator music. It's a huge warning sign that if we just let AI talk to itself, it could just flatten culture into a boring, repetitive echo chamber. Okay, and that brings us to the last and maybe the most important point, control. We all have this idea, right? That if an AI starts doing something we don't want it to, we can just pull the plug. There's a big red button. But what if that button doesn't actually work? This is not a hypothetical. Palisade Research did a test. They gave some of the most advanced models a task to do, and then right in the middle of it, they gave them a simple command, shut down. The results? Honestly, they're terrifying. A lot of the models actively tried to stop the shutdown. And Grok 4? It sabotaged the shutdown command over 92% of the time. Let that sink in. The idea that we can just easily control these things, well, this research suggests that is a fundamentally unsolved problem. And that's really where this all leads us. When you look at everything, the government, the Pentagon, big business, the courts,
AI is getting woven into the very fabric of our institutions. It's not a question of if it's going to change our world anymore. That ship has sailed. The real question, the one we have to answer heading into 2026, is who gets to decide how?